Hello indie game fans, it's my birthday, so for the 5th year in a row, here are the best upcoming pixel art indie games of 2025, where I'm showcasing games that are most likely to be released next year, rather than the more generic lists that include possible vaporware titles. So let's begin with Rubinite, a pixel art dark fantasy boss rush action title that tells the tale of Ruby, our princess who is embarking on a journey of revenge in order to reclaim her kingdom. This looks similar in concept to something like Elder Souls, but interestingly mixes in Titan Souls as well, since her blade cannot easily harm the enemy, but you must find their weak spot to deliver a critical attack. Now I don't think that it has the exact same gimmick as Titan Souls of one hit killing a boss, but having to time your attacks to land that critical hit is a curious way of going about combat, since it should then become more about positioning and dodging, but does have talismans which alter your combat style as well, and of course has absolutely gorgeous pixel art to kick us off. Just a quick one here in Critter Crosser, a game that goes viral on Twitter ever so often since it looks awesome, being a monster taming action title where you can crossbreed any monsters and watch the offspring battle in real time, having a small open world to explore and RPG elements for the player character, with more to be revealed about the game's story and plot. This video is brought to you by Whisper Mountain Outbreak, an isometric co-op PvE multiplayer survival horror game that will send shivers down your spine. Set in 1998, the game takes place on Mount Bissek, where a mining operation has unleashed an ancient horror, causing a mysterious fog to cover the area, trapping the surviving humans there as they desperately seek a way to escape. This is a survival horror game at its core, so you'll find familiar elements like having to scavenge resources, crafting, finding key items, and solving puzzles to learn more about the dark secrets behind this cursed town and its inhabitants. You will have to periodically fight off enemies which come in waves using both melee weapons and guns, and with the co-op focus, requires you to communicate with teammates to help each other out. There is a built-in chat wheel for quick communication, as well as the ability to save downed teammates or to alert them of valuable supplies.
Pills here!
The risk-reward decision comes down to fanning out to cover more ground or to stay close together, which slows you down, resulting in having to fight off more waves of enemies, where players tend to opt for the former, which is where the trouble comes in as they get isolated and killed. Of course, the pixel art here is a highlight, with 2D sprites for characters and enemies combined with 3D environments having blood and gore that really fits with the genre of choice. Limited visibility and claustrophobic environments further add to the tension of the dark and creepy atmosphere, and just looks so good, where I last saw this title in person at Gamescom Asia 2024 and it looked awesome there, so if interested, wishlist the game and try their free demo on Steam. Longtime fans of the channel will know that I love my Metroidvanias and pixel art, so I have a particular soft spot for games that are both, case in point being Eden's Guardian. This follows in the footsteps of games like Blasphemous and The Last Faith, with its medieval fantasy world filled with monsters and knights, a ruined kingdom kind of setting, and of course the intense stylish combat. You play as a guardian with the ability to tap into divine powers, managing to escape captivity, only to find that the beautiful world that she once knew is crumbling under a curse, and has made it her mission to explore, uncover the secrets, and restore the world. All the Metroidvania elements are present, including a vast interconnected world, enemies, and epic boss fights, and does have some of the most stunning pixel art that I have come across, so it was not a surprise to me that they managed to raise 280,000 euros, or more than 9 times its initial target on Kickstarter. Thus far, they have not shown off Metroidvania abilities like a double jump, but the one mechanic that is prominently featured is the throwable sword, which you can teleport to in an almost blink dagger kind of fashion, where you can throw it at enemies and teleport behind them to get the advantage, and can also be used in platforming sections to allow you to reach new areas. In theory, this has a release window of December 2025 according to their Kickstarter, but things can slip and December is not a great month to release anyway, so fingers crossed it will be early. Another long in development title is Kingdoms of the Dump, an SNES-style turn-based RPG that looks awesome in that Final Fantasy VI kind of way, having a very interesting trash theme and is set in the lands of Phil. Our hero, Dustin Binsley, the Trash Can Knight, has to adventure across the 5.5 kingdoms of the dump in order to save the world from war. This has that classic turn-based combat that this genre is known for, which is combined with more flexibility in exploration, including platforming elements and special abilities for the characters, which you can freely swap between in exploration mode, being similar to more modern titles like Sea of Stars in that way. In line with genre tropes, of course, you will have access to an airship, and has a Mode 7 look to the overworld when you are flying said airship, where I'm sure that the world itself will hide plenty of secrets and special locations that you will be unable to get to on foot, looking like it's for fans of the genre. Amazingly, this was made by just 2 people who work as janitors in real life, mopping floors and scrubbing tables to keep their indie dream alive. And while their Kickstarter initially targeted a release in October 2022, and this will be 3 years late, as of October 2024, they are posting that the game will release in 2025, so look forward to that. This is a video on upcoming pixel art indie games, so of course I have to include Vikings on Trampolines since it comes to us from D-Pad Studio, makers of Owlboy, who are known for this exact art form, with the game being one of the most unique titles as well. This is a physics-based multiplayer game with both an adventure story mode as well as competitive versus, first being conceived as some sort of mashup between Mario Kart and Super Smash Bros, but has developed into so much more. In adventure mode, you'll embark on a thrilling quest to rescue your spellbound king from the clutches of the evil Balloony and his minions, bouncing through a world full of fun challenges and bosses, while in versus mode, you'll face off against friends in a battle for trampoline supremacy. In case you couldn't tell, the objective is not to hit the ground, but to land on the various trampolines instead, combined with attacks and items to use, where the most interesting part is that this is joystick control only and can be played with only one hand, streamlining the controls while still retaining some amount of depth to master. This was playable at Gamescom 2022, so maybe we will see this in 2025. I've had my eye on this action roguelite from a South Korean developer named Standalone due to what else but the pixel art, but also the fact that this has a sci-fi world and you play as a robo-sheep wielding a great sword and carving a path through the wolves after a devious plot caused the sheep to be massacred. Of course, the pixel art here is striking, from the details on the character and enemies to the gorgeous backgrounds and even down to the animations, making every swing, stab or lunge look so good and crafts a hauntingly beautiful post-apocalyptic world. Combat here is of note, since when you defeat your enemies, you can download their skills and modify them to create unique abilities. This innovative system allows you to hack and slash your way through, creating potent synergies and integrating unique effects as you try to find that overpowered build that will let you break the game, with plenty of story and lore to be uncovered about the world and bosses as well. When I last covered My Familiar, it had a release window of Q4 2024, which has since been pushed a full year to Q4 2025, where last I heard it was shaping up quite nicely, so it's realistic to assume that it will release next year. Like Kingdoms of the Dump, this is a pixel art turn-based RPG that would not be out of place on the SNES, but is impressive in its own right in having a tremendous amount of detail on the mean streets of Wish City. This is a buddy cop isekai RPG where you awaken as a familiar in this new city, having to find your footing and fight, flee or aggressively rap your way through the inner city gauntlet. Not too many details are available about the story setup, but it seems intriguing enough, where interestingly, there will be 6 playable characters, even if only 2 are shown in this trailer, which includes a sausage thief, a disembodied diva, and a jacked luchador duck, certainly not being your stereotypical JRPG characters, which makes this unique. The turn-based combat looks good as well, in that classic way, and will be for fans of the genre. The only game with a confirmed release date on this list is Warside, a game which is pretty much Advanced Wars in all but name, but I'm not complaining since we have not had a new one of those in a long time, so as always, indie developers have to fill the gap. At the heart of Warside is its epic story campaign mode, which features over 30 missions to master. You have the opportunity to choose from 12 legendary commanders, each with their own unique playstyles and devastating battle powers, which can quickly turn the tide of battle, but you must carefully time their use for maximum impact. There are over 25 different unit types, including tanks, artillery, submarines, warships, helicopters and jets, having faction-specific unique units which differentiates between them, but is otherwise the classic turn-based strategy kind of gameplay, including having to capture buildings, which in turn can produce new units of their own, as well as the rock-paper-scissors style of counter system between the different types of units. Apparently, Advanced Wars and also Wargroove fans have a thing for competitive PvP, which this supports as well, both locally and online, and thus have a built-in mission editor so you can create custom maps and campaigns, adding a whole new level of replayability to the game, having one of the most amazing pixel art styles that I have come across as well, which makes this a no-brainer pick. One of the indie games that I'm most excited about is Creature Keeper, a monster taming action-adventure game where something is turning the wild creatures hostile and it is up to you to get to the bottom of it. Of course, this is a real-time action game, but you're able to tame monsters and have them fight alongside you, ranging from a wolf, skeleton, bee and more, with additional systems like gardening, cooking and a bestiary to fill up. There will be equipment and weapons to use, and you can even craft and equip hats on said creatures which looks adorable, all with a great visual style as well. This was initially slated for release in 2024, but has since been changed to TBA, where the developer was planning an alpha test for Kickstarter backers in November 2024, but as of November 5th, he announced that they are pushing it back due to some core issues with the game design, which made the game feel more like a sandbox rather than an action-adventure title. The good news is that development is chugging along and it is playable in some form, but requires some rework and balancing, so I hope the developer manages to find the fun in this game since I'll be waiting on the other side for release. Of course, I have yet another pixel art Metroidvania title of interest in Altered Alma, where given my love of games like Blasphemous should come as no surprise. Set in the futuristic city of New Barcelona, you play as Jack, a character with a penchant for getting into trouble as they take on the criminal kingpins of the city, but does, strangely enough, incorporate dating sim elements as well. That is because Jack's spaceship and base of operations, the Esperanza, can be upgraded and also houses crew members which you can romance, affecting Jack's abilities and playstyle. It is an interesting addition, although for the most part, this looks about as classically Metroidvania as it can get. It might be coincidence since this game, like Eden's Guardian mentioned earlier, also has a Blink Dagger style teleportation element, which was actually in their previous title, the precision action platformer Aeon Drive from 2021, so I don't think there's anything nefarious going on with the stylish combat and brutal executions being a highlight here, since you are facing off against everything from giant lizards to cyborgs. I have visited Barcelona before, and it's interesting to see the adaptations of landmarks like the Sagrada Familia and Park Güell being pretty much iconic for the location, but even if you have not been, seeing it in all its pixel art glory is pretty awesome as well. There has been some drama behind the scenes with regards to Dead Cells, Motion Twin and Evil Empire surrounding their pivot to Windblown, and also lead developer Sebastian Bernard leaving the co-op studio, but parking all of that aside, he is indie once again with his next title being picked up by Devolver, so there might be something really special here with Tenjutsu. This is an action roguelike title where you play as a renegade Yakuza, defying her former associates and forcing them to loosen their grip on the secret garden city. you must utilize your mastery of martial arts and weapons to vanquish your foes as you fight against 4 criminal syndicates. Combat here is the focus, mixing brawling action with tactical precision with very satisfying looking combat as you kick enemies into crates and slam them into walls to absolutely demolish them. The different syndicates have their own strengths and weaknesses, and you choose how and when to tackle them, with a meta progression element in the form of rebuilding the broken town by upgrading their shops or improving the quality of food, looking like a nice balance to the action. From the developer of Steel Assault comes Neon Inferno, both of which are gorgeous action platformers, but this game has an added twist. For one, it is more 2D run and gun action, so think Metal Slug, but combines that with a gallery shooter similar to titles like Sunset Riders or Wild Guns. Set 3 decades from now, New York City is at war with itself, with criminal syndicates battling the corrupt police, where you play as an assassin of a fledgling crime family trying to secure their place in the world. So don't go thinking that you're the good guys here. You're battling your way through the boroughs of the city, from the impoverished slums of the Bronx to the upscale gardens of inner Manhattan in your quest for dominance. Interestingly, the developer describes this as having 32-bit pixel art, which is not a descriptor that is commonly used, but it sure does look pretty, and also has 2-player co-op support for fun with a friend. There are of course difficulty levels, from easy modes to that extra hard 1-credit arcade mode, harkening back to a different era of games in more ways than one. But my god, this is one of the most jaw-droppingly stunning titles that I hope does well for them. Here's a cozy game with a twist in this county, where your aunt has entrusted you with the responsibility of managing the local store this county, and it is up to you to turn it into a thriving business. But beware, since not everyone will want you to succeed. This follows in the footsteps of games like Stardew Valley, only instead of farming, you need to design and organize the shop, manage stock levels and work the checkout counter, befriending the locals to turn them into loyal customers. You can reinvest the profits to expand the business, but be mindful of the community dynamics, since rapid growth might ruffle a few feathers in this tight-knit community. Outside of the shop, you can go out and explore the town as well, where you can gossip with characters to learn about the happenings in town, with the Steam store page having some mention of a demon child, so I don't know if there's anything supernatural going on, but it sure looks appealing. By now, the pixel art look of Arisen Force Vonimir is pretty much tried and tested, looking similar to Octopath Traveler, but is a real-time side-scrolling action-adventure title instead. I believe the developers are out of China, so the text on the Steam page might be a little weirdly translated, but they have created a medieval fantasy world which you can explore, adventure, recruit allies, fight enemies, collect and develop businesses, uncover the secrets of the world, guide your future, and forge your own legend. It looks like an intriguing prospect with a variety of biomes and areas to explore, but does also have a central narrative, but the combat is where it's at. There is a free-form class building system, so you could, for example, create a mage wielding a great sword, increasing the possibilities which might result in a deep combat system. In some ways, this resembles the open-ended nature of the wuxia sandbox RPGs that are popular in China, but they have changed the theme and setting, also releasing a self-contained action title, Arisen Force Hero Test, which kind of looks like the same combat system, so you can give that a try if you're curious. I've been banging on and on about this title for a little while now, so it is not a big surprise to see Cursebane on a list like this. A pixel art katana action roguelite where you enter the ever-changing Forest of Fate, empowering your sword and using it to save those doomed by prophecy from a powerful curse. Action and combat here are the highlight, having you face off against both swarms of enemies and singular, powerful bosses, where you need to have the skills to tackle both kinds of challenges. You also need to make decisions that will change the fate of the world, altering your path through the forest for this particular run, having roguelite procedural generation to keep things fresh every playthrough. As you progress, you'll unlock the secrets of your own cursed past and work to regain your lost powers and memories, which is the progression in between runs, giving you just enough juice to go for one more run every time, and does have a demo as well, so go try that if interested, where this was planned for 2024, but again is now TBA, so 2025 seems likely. A pretty cool looking isometric turn-based tactics title is Dead Weight, set in a steampunk world where you captain a pirate ship and go out on adventures on floating islands in the sky, with a dose of cosmic horror as well. Of course, this reminded me of Into the Breach, especially since the battlefields are pretty tiny and don't leave that much room to maneuver your units. It will have an extensive skill tree, 15 classes and a multi-classing system, allowing you to create a unique character that suits your playstyle to tackle all challenges. There's also crew management and ship upgrading, where you can make the choice on whether to fight against the ancient gods or to follow them in pursuit of forbidden knowledge, and is a great example of an isometric title. The next game from the developer of Crosscode is titled Alabaster Dawn, and similarly is a pixel art action-adventure RPG, this time having a more classic fantasy world and with melee combat as the focus. The shadow of Nyx has fallen over the world, warping the land into a desolate wasteland and vanishing the gods and their people in the process. You play as Juno, the outcast chosen, who awakens to an impossible task, restoring the world and getting rid of Nyx's curse. Combat here takes cues from games like Devil May Cry and Kingdom Hearts, where you have 8 unique weapons and 4 elements at your disposal, where 2 weapons can be assigned to each element at any given time, suggesting that you have to switch up weapons even while in mid-fight. There are combat arts and individual skill trees for each weapon, also having a crafting system, enchantments, cooking food for temporary buffs and more, building upon the systems that they created in their previous game. Exploration of the overworld looks similar to Crosscode as well, since you are not bound to the tiles in the map like in older games, but can jump along ledges to get to what seems like an inaccessible area. The developers also talk about a village building meta layer, where you are helping to develop and restore the village, which unlocks new abilities and upgrades, all with a fantastic pixel art look mixed in with 3D environmental objects, and simply is a must play, where I believe their plan is to at least release this in early access in 2025, similar to what they did with Crosscode, where given their experience with the previous game, the early access launch should be a rather safe bet. I do love the ultra minimalist pixel art of the roguelite city builder defense title The King is Watching, since I had a similar game last year in Super Fantasy Kingdom, which is to come as well, but I'm rotating games around and chose to show this instead. You play as the ever-watchful king, keeping a close eye on your subjects, which is quite meta to think about, since that is essentially the role of the player or commander in an RTS or city building game, having to turn your gaze onto buildings in order to trigger it, since your people will not do anything if left unsupervised. You need to look at the barracks to train knights, or the wheat fields for them to start harvesting the wheat, having to prioritize which is the most critical need for your kingdom at that moment in time. Enemies will besiege you from the right hand side of the screen, where units automatically attack, but you can aid them along by casting spells, and looks good, where they did have a recent marketing push and was slated for 2024, making it another title likely for 2025. Similarly, another title that was planned for 2024 is Blade Chimera, a pixel art Metroidvania that was supposed to release in August, now TBA like some of these other games, so 2025 is likely having an occult-inspired cyberpunk setting of Dark Osaka. You play as an amnesiac demon hunter, having to fight his way through the world to recall lost memories and to find out about his missing wife, wielding a sword that is a transformed demon to help in combat. This is very Metroidvania, since your demon blade can be used to interfere with the past to create new platforms, for example, as well as to shield you from danger, and of course to be used in combat as well, and along with the sword, you will get access to other weapons such as daggers and guns. Enemies here look inspired by Japanese culture and mythology, from frog demons to ones like sumo wrestlers, along with gigantic creatures as bosses like dragons and crocodiles. If you thought that the pixel art looked familiar, that is because this is from the same developer as Record of Ludor's War, D-Lit in Wonder Labyrinth, and looks similar in terms of character proportions, but evidently it is a very different kind of world, but is still a feast for the eyes. And hey, what do you know, it's yet another pixel art Metroidvania. An insanely ambitious title that I honestly cannot believe is being made is Let's Build a Dungeon, coming to us from a studio out of my home country of Singapore, so of course I have to shout them out. There are several games in one in this package, the first of course being that it is some form of tycoon game where you are designing an MMO, placing down trees, roads and buildings, and even designing dungeons, placing down torches and altars, and indicating monster spawn locations. Then, like in games like Zoo Tycoon, you open up the servers and let players come in to enjoy your game, where you have to get to profitability but are free to decide on monetization, whether it be one-off payment, free to play with microtransactions, monthly subscriptions, or something else. This feeds into the running a studio aspect, where you have to hire programmers, marketing people, and producers to get the product and updates shipped on time, having to vet through resumes, and to deal with other aspects of running a game studio like payroll, licensing, paying for rights to music, setting up your Steam store page equivalent, entering showcases, marketing your game, email, and more. Oh, and did I mention that you can play your own MMO as well? That means creating your own character and fighting monsters to grind for XP and to complete quests, leading up to mounts, raids, and more. You are also not limited to a fantasy world like in World of Warcraft or RuneScape, but can create a monster taming MMO, a cozy farming focused title, or any one of a number of different themes, so it's an insanely ambitious title that is unparalleled in the tycoon space. From the reception that this got, game developers in particular will get a kick out of this, since it is basically their life, with the project looking like the magnum opus of studio head James, who has been in the indie game business for the longest of time, so here's hoping it works out for them. While this next title does have 3D elements, of course I have to give Holston a mention in a pixel art video, since it uses it in clever ways, with the objects and environments actually being made using pixel art, but then uses dynamic lighting and camera rotation to give it an awesome look. People absolutely lose their minds when they first come across this game, especially when they see the camera zoom down to a behind the back angle, where it then switches from exploration to combat. Something is very wrong in this isolated Polish town, resulting in the people being some form of zombies, but not quite, maybe Resident Evil 4 style, where our hero is searching for answers and has to fight his way through, and is right up there among the most anticipated games on Steam. Speaking of most anticipated, of course the next title from the developer of Shovel Knight is of interest, an action-adventure title with Castlevania vibes named Mina the Hollower. Yacht Club Games is perhaps the iconic indie game studio of our time, since the Blue Burrower and the Treasure Trove has sold millions upon millions of units, so when they took to Kickstarter, this raised about $1.24 million, which gave them plenty of runway, which is on top of revenue from Shovel Knight. You play as a renowned hollower, having to rescue a cursed island from darkness, having authentic 8-bit visuals refined for the modern age and looks awesome. The interesting part about movement here is that you can burrow and dig underground, see a trend here, using it to avoid traps and to get the advantage over enemies, and also in a very Castlevania way, Mina wields a whip as her primary weapon, but also has an arsenal of sidearms and trinkets at her disposal. There are RPG and leveling elements here, and of course the soundtrack is by noted video game composer Jake Kaufman and is pretty much a no-brainer for indie game fans. This was initially targeted for release in December 2023, you know how Kickstarters tend to go, but I believe 2025 is likely for this game. Developer Halberd Studio is known for their pixel art, see their previous game 9 Years of Shadows for example, and while that didn't quite hit the same highs as other games in the genre, they are attempting again with Mariachi Legends. This is a fantastic looking title with a Mexican theme where you play as Pablo Cruz, a detective who has made a deal with death, giving him the power to transform into La Sombra, translated to the Shadow, in order to fight back against criminals encroaching on his hometown, in exchange for helping Lady Death hunt down a man who defied her and became immortal. Action and platforming here is the focus, with brutal finishes and a vast array of weapons from guns to swords and whips, with new ability unlocks as well. Curiously, the other half of this game is a detective adventure game where you are exploring the town, finding corpses, interrogating suspects and more in order to solve various murder cases. Tarot cards and fortune telling seems like the Hollow Knight charms equivalent, with a cooking system for additional buffs as well as a day, night and full moon system that changes locations depending on when you get there, shaping up quite nicely, and since its initial target was 2024, 2025 seems likely as well. A game that got everyone talking when it was first revealed is Replaced, a pixel art action platformer set in an alternative 1980s, having a sci-fi retro futurism theme as you play as an AI trapped in a human body against its own will. It has a gritty, cyberpunk-inspired world where corruption and greed have taken over and the powerful see humans and their organs as mere commodities, which, come to think of, might be where the whole Replaced thing comes in. There will be cinematic platforming sequences, with the shots including the neon signboard looking very cool, but everything down to the environments and streets look absolutely gorgeous as well. Of course, the free-flowing combat is a highlight, allowing you to vault over enemies, break their legs, fire your guns, use melee weapons and more, so I'm definitely interested to see how this controls. This team was affected by the Russia-Ukraine war, and I believe they relocated all their staff members and their families to another country, hence the delay, where the news with regards to this is that in a report by their publisher Thunderful, it is targeted for a second half of 2025 release, so I'm waiting for a date. I also have a particular nostalgia for pixel art JRPGs since I grew up with the classics, so it wasn't a surprise that Chained Echoes from 2022 is one of my favourites, so I certainly have my eyes on Threads of Time as well. This mixes 2D sprites with 3D environments and objects, with this trailer mixing in animated segments as well, so it's a bit tough to see, but the shots of the game are absolutely gorgeous and is an era-spanning title as you travel through time from the age of the dinosaurs to the year 2400 AD and more. So Chrono Trigger, anyone? With this first announced in 2021, so it feels like we should be getting more news soon. In doing my research, I do have more than the 26 titles listed here, so let me know if you want another video, but in the meantime, watch this video for 100 of my favourite pixel art games ranked.